I would like to take this opportunity to welcome my guests. I'll do ladies first. Tracy Gachier, please come and join me on stage. Okay, pause. We have to do this again. Guys, please. You are embarrassing me. When I call them, please be happy to see them, okay? We do again. Yeah? Are we ready? Chawela. Okay, my first guest on stage is Tracy Gachier Kagiri. Please come, pick a seat. My second guest is Ryan Majiwa. I don't like our energy, but it's okay, I'll let it go. I've let it go. Welcome to my guests. It's okay, we'll see you. Okay, welcome. Thank you guys for making the time to be here. I'm going to start my conversation the way I start all of my conversations. I ask my guests to introduce themselves to the people as they would like to, because I feel like sometimes when I read out what it is that's important to you, it might not be important to you. So introduce yourself, please, to the people as you would like us to know you. Tracy.
Hi, everyone. How are you guys? I'm excited to be here. I'm feeling a bit shy. So my name is Tracy Gachier. I wear two hats. I am a content creator, so I have built a brand over the last couple of years where I'm just authentic. I talk about culture and meaningful conversations. I used to have a podcast. You didn't ask about the ones who used to have.
It's okay. So from 2019, I'll ask you about it. Don't worry.
Yeah, but I still do create content on other platforms. I have also worked with a couple of brands, from lifestyle brands, tech brands, you name it. I've worked with a bunch of brands, and I also create fun content, lifestyle content on my platforms. Other than that, my second hat is I work for an agency, an advertising agency. I'm the business unit head for the digital department of a leading agency called Creative Edge. And so basically my day-to-day looks like doing strategy from a digital perspective. And we work with some of the biggest brands across East Africa and also globally. Your telco brands, FMCGs, etc. So that's who I am. Yeah. Don't know if there's any other thing.
It's up to you. Do you want us to know your favorite color?
My favorite color is green. I enjoy... It's true, by the way.
They said be specific.
I love all greens. I like this green. And I enjoy TV shows. I love listening to podcasts as well. Don't ask me for my favorite one, if that was it.
I won't.
I love a lot of podcasts. And yeah, I'm an extrovert. I'm a lover of life. You'll always find me outside somewhere. Yeah.
Excellent. Nice to meet you. Ryan, please introduce yourself to the people.
My name is Ryan Majiwa. I can't usually tell if mics are on. Hi, my name is... Can you tell the difference? It's on. Okay, cool. Hi, my name is Ryan Majiwa. I am the general manager of Saracen Marketing Group Tanzania. I am the founder of Rye Boy Cocktails, and I've been working in advertising for about 15, 16 years. I've done both brand side, I have done the agency side, I've worked with a bunch of brands. And right now I work on building an agency, which is a strange thing. It's, it's a lot of different things, but I have worked with a lot of brands. I have a podcast that exists in my head that's called the Afflicted by Nonsense podcast. It's not a real podcast. You guys wouldn't listen to the things I have to say, and we'll get into why a bit later. I am, though, the chairman of a podcast club, a very successful podcast club, where we listen to podcasts, we critique the stuff that's in there. I'm here to talk about how people can make better podcasts so that they can get a bit more advertising. I do make content as well, right? Not as good as Tracy's content, but the agency I work with also works with leading brands, so in that age we are competitors. But yeah.
Excellent. Nice to meet you
And I have a
both.
dog called Axe.
Called Axe.
Axe. AXUM. It's pronounced Axe.
Okay. Okay, excellent. And Axe is on TikTok, yes? With
We
an
are on
episode?
TikTok together.
Excellent. So if you want to meet the dog, TikTok, he can't remember the handle. Maybe by the end of it, we will know the handle. My name is Gadoni. I am your host today. I am the community manager at AfriPods. AfriPods is a podcast hosting and distribution platform focused on the African creator, and we're building the largest library of African audio stories on the planet. I'm also a podcaster. Like Tracy, I haven't released an episode in a while. But my podcast is Okay Kiasi. I host it together with my sisters. We talk about, we're sisters. What do sisters talk about? But it's good based on what our audience is. So if you want to listen to it, please check it out. So my first question to both of you, because you both said you work in the space of advertisers and things like that, strategy and all of that, based on who your clients are, what is it that they're looking for in a podcast before considering a partnership? What do you think, or what do you know they're looking for?
Okay, I can go first. So I'd say a couple of things. So one, they look at your audience. That is, if you do provide your media kit or whatever that shows them who your audience is. But I think right now people already know the audience that particularly listen to your podcast. I think they look at whether the audience aligns to the brand. The second thing I would say is also, I don't know if it's a big deal, maybe you would say, but I think professionalism in terms of like the quality. Yeah, the quality of your podcast. How is it a clean audio? What are you, what effort have you put in to create your podcast? And then also I'd say maybe like in terms of brand safety, what are you talking about? What are your themes? What's your tone like? Yeah, those are the key things that I'd highlight.
Do you have anything to add to
Yeah.
what she said?
Yeah. So I think do you want to play good cop, bad cop, Tracy? Where I can be the bad cop.
Good cop.
You'll be good cop.
Yes.
Okay. The clients don't know your podcast. They don't look for anything. They've never heard about you.
That's
They
true.
have no idea who you are.
Yeah.
Your podcast is one of millions out there, right? So the thing that they know is what the agency teams are going to tell them. So it's a team like Tracy's or a team like mine, and those are the people who you're going to have to sell on the numbers, right? So you've got options in terms of what is it that you're bringing to the table that they can exchange in terms of value, so they can invest in it, right? So the background of the consulting group that I work for, Saracen, is a media buying agency, which means that the number one thing that they're looking for their clients is to reach as many people as possible. So when they look at your podcast, or when they look at the podcast that we've recommended to them, or when we're looking at podcasts, a lot of it is going to be about exactly what Tracy has said. So the numbers, who is it? So right now, if you're starting your podcast, if you've been on your podcast journey for a while and you don't have a lot, the only thing that I would add is what's the quality of your audience? Who are the people who listen to you where this is the engaging medium that they consume, that in other mediums they just be passing by, right? So you drive past a billboard, you scroll past a TikTok, but you make time to listen to this podcast, you could sell the quality of your audience, right? So that's what I would recommend, that, agencies look at, clients look at, who is this person talking to, what's the content that they're making, and is it talking to a particular audience, because that'll then make the decision one way or another.
Okay, so you've both brought up something about media kits, understanding your audience, presenting yourself, what's the quality of your audience. So then my question is, what should podcasters consider when creating the media kits, pitch decks, or things like that for advertisers? When I'm creating my document, what are the considerations I need to make so that when it comes to you as the agency or to your clients, it's presentable before we start considering how to make money?
So is the assumption here, and I'd be very happy to have this conversation, whether it's in your questions or not. The assumption here is that you're making the podcast to monetize it.
Yeah.
That you're making a podcast because the ultimate goal is making money.
Or
right?
maybe it's part of the goals.
I think, yeah, so
Right.
it's based on our experience from AfriPods, a lot of the podcasters after a few episodes are just like, how do I make money? Because a lot of people, yes, look at it as it is a hobby and it's fun. But then when you start podcasting, if anyone has started podcasting, you realize how much time it takes, how much effort, how much money. And so they're just like, what is the value it's giving me? And how do I get more value from it? So sometimes I think podcasters don't necessarily go in with the mindset of monetization, but then they get to a point where they're like, okay, now I need money, or I want to make money from this thing, or I've been told by maybe your auntie that you can make money from this thing. But how do I present the product that I now have to a person like you or Tracy or your clients to then enable myself to make money? Whether it's not from directly advertising, whatever version of monetization.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my answer to that would be that you have to realize that you're making a product. You're making a monetizable product. And that's very different from a passion project, right? So there was a time when making a podcast was, you just had something to say. You got a couple of friends around a mic and you just spoke, right? And those became the episodes. Now, that was then when podcasts were far and mics hadn't, become as ubiquitous as they are. But now, when you're starting a podcast, if you don't know that you're going to monetize, then keep it as your passion project. Keep getting your homies together, keep making that content, because it's almost the same thing on the other side. If you know that you're making a podcast that you're going to eventually want to monetize, then you have to set it up as such, right? You have to know your format. This is a 40-minute podcast that has 20-minute segments, that has, a couple of mentions here and there, because what that then does is that it allows you to exchange something, right? So here is when you fit into my brand, and here is what you can sell. So then once you've structured your podcast like that, and you know that we're making this thing, then it's the grind. People have to then know your podcast so that they can now buy those little elements that you have to sell. What do you say?
And talking about the media kit, I think that's the space where you just sell yourself. Like, you have to really, the first few, I don't know if it's going to be slides or a video or whatever, has to just really make somebody really interested in what you have to offer. I usually see a lot of media kits that are very, it's okay to create them on Canva and everything, it's fine, but don't just pick up a template and copy paste and edit it and everything. It's your opportunity to really talk about this is me and this is why you should pick me and this is who listens to me, because like you said, the clients don't know the podcast, they don't know anything, they don't even know you can get demographics from there, they don't even know how much detail or the type of audience that you attract. So this is the opportunity for you to literally sell yourself and then create an opportunity even for them to see that you want money. Yeah, don't leave out the bit where you have your pricing models. Don't be shy about it. I think that usually also makes them think about, okay, well, this is what I need to do when I'm thinking about podcasts. So yeah, that's what I think I'd add on to it.
Okay, so as agency representatives, just based on what you do as work, how would you decide that a podcast is a good fit for your client?
That's, first of all, we're never the final decision makers. Let me just say that out here, because people look at agencies like, what
I am the final decision maker. It's me.
He's not.
It's me.
We definitely do give direction, but at the end of the day, we're never the final decision makers or the final, the people who decide on the money. We'll be told about the budgets and everything, but then at the end of the day, the client is a decision maker.
So how do you decide who to present to your client?
So this is a very interesting question, because first of all, if you're we are behind the laptops in agencies lies human beings. So you can't be shy and you want to make money. So you have to be an out there podcaster for us to be able to, first of all, even notice that you exist. You can't be a podcaster and you don't promote your podcast anywhere. Not promote in terms of buy media. You don't talk about it, you don't network, you don't tell people about your podcast, you don't. So it's very difficult for us to get to know all the podcasts that exist. So whoever is in our faces, to be honest, are the people who are going to put forward. And also whoever aligns with that niche. So say, for example, I have a bank, and immediately I'll think about financially incorrect. Like, yeah. Or I'll think about, I don't know, who else do you, yeah. So depending on your niche, that's how we'll pick. And then also depending on how much, like, you've put yourself out there. Yeah.
I think it's worth understanding how the process works and where a podcast sits within the ecosystem, right? So traditionally, from a media perspective, you would have a product, right? So some water, some juice that you want to get out to everyone else, and there'd be an amount of money that you're willing to put into the advertising spend to get this message out to everyone else. And you'd come to a team like Tracy's or myself, and you'd say, this is the amount of money that we have to get our message out to all these people. And then now we get into strategy, we get into thinking, we get into deciding, we get into these are the places where we're going to put this money so that we can communicate about this water and juice to all these people outside here, right? Now, one of those things is online media, and then if you shrink that even smaller, one of those things is streaming audio. If you shrink that even smaller, one of those things is podcasting, right? So that's the process by which the funding or the money that we are eventually going to place onto the podcast is coming down. And the reason why it's getting placed down like that is because we are trying to send a particular message about our water and our juice, right? So at that point, all the decisions about being on online streaming media have been made, but then you've got two different products, right? So who are the people, who are the podcasts where we're going to put people who we can then, who would be a bit more receptive to the message about water, and who are the people who are going to be on a podcast where we're going to listen to the podcast who are more receptive to the message about juice. And then you'd get the absolute split that's at the very bottom about which podcast should we then therefore choose, and we get into what Tracy's talking about. Then, which are the podcasts that I know? Now, it's an important point to come there because...
And please also mention we usually have like 2 days to do this.
Yeah. Also, all this that I'm talking about, we've been called in the morning. Hey,
like
guys,
2
we need
days
this
to
thing
do all
out 30 hours. You know, there's not a lot of time to do that. Now, because now you've, very basically spoken about what the media buying process is like, that you're also competing with like the other channels. How much can we reach? And on all these other channels, we have a lot of data because they've existed for such a long time, right? So we know which radio stations are playing where, we know what sort of TV exactly. And then from the social media platforms, we also have some information. But when it comes to podcasts, especially the local podcasts, we don't yet have as much information as we should, right? So we rely on the podcasters yourselves to come in there and tell us, I've got 100,000 listeners who download this many episodes and that, right? So the data that you give us, as good and as clear as that data can be, is how we will then make the decisions. And then comes very close to what Tracy's talking about. If you're presenting just Canva and it just looks like that, you've got a very cute deck, but it doesn't say anything, then you've got a cute deck that's not going to get funded. But if you've got, this is my listeners, this is who I speak to, then when I'm deciding whether it's juice or water to put on advertising, I will put some money there. So that's what that decision-making process looks like. Like Tracy's saying, we don't have a lot of time for it, but we need to do it, and that's how we end up deciding where the advertising budget or where the funding for the podcast is going to go.
Okay. Based on what it is you're talking about on like the money, the presentation, and all of these things, and how much time you have to decide these things, right? What are the things you would advise podcasters to do to present themselves to you? Because I might not be in the position where, for example, if Tracy starts a podcast, it's easier to get eyes on her podcast because she already has the platform that she has. So if I don't have a platform, what are the ways that I can get, whether it's my deck to you, don't do just basic Canva is what we have learned, but whether it's getting my deck to you, is there places that they can look as podcasters? Because I feel like as the thought that you had earlier about it being a product, when you're thinking about your product and how to get the water into the market, you have to consider where it's going to go and you do some sort of research before. So where are the places they can go to find the information, for example, that they can then present themselves, whether it's numbers wise or contact wise, to get in your faces?
So initially, like if you started your podcast today, you'd be at the bottom of the pyramid in terms of podcasts. We can't have a conversation about me advertising on your podcast because, I mean, you have 6 listeners and one of them is not related to you. You know, only one of them is not. So
But my mom can buy stuff.
yay, 100%. And then if I need that to happen, I'll text you and you'll tell mom, right? So if you're just starting a podcast, you're not going to get like advertising or brand partnerships in the way they do. And it's also probably worth talking about how this money is then structured. If I'm working with you, if I'm advertising in your podcast, if you're on a network like AfriPods, then the ads can get served to you programmatically. But you have to have done the work. That's what I'm saying. That if you start your podcast today, you have to have, 7 TikToks a day with clips and clickbaiting people. You have to have at least some work being done so that people can discover your podcast. And people here being, my team, Tracy's team, ourselves, and then for sure the clients, right? There's no amount of times, like if I had $1, if I had a shilling rather, a Kenyan shilling, for every time someone, like a brand team member, sends you a TikTok and says, why don't you advertise on this podcast? Like, you know as much about this podcast as I do. Yeah. Like, you've just seen it there, and that's what all those clips are for. So as you make your podcast, and this comes back to the original 2 points, are you just having a fun time, right, making content, or are you building a podcast? If you are building a podcast, somewhere in your plan, you have to have something about getting discovered. And this is a volume of content across multiple platforms so that you are discovered. When I look up there, which are the best places for dogs, your podcast better pop up because that's what I'm organically interested. And now, as someone who is, privileged, let's say it, enough to be in the room when the conversation is being had, then I can say, you know what, this water, it's great for dogs, it's great for people, let's advertise on this podcast. Now, there will come a time when we'll be asked for numbers, right? So right before we get that final approval, the one that, I'm not the final approver, you're absolutely right? At that point, I have to justify it with numbers. We're going to spend 600,000 on this podcast. Give me a metric, any. This amount of awareness, this amount of reach, something long-term, something short-term, this many, 15 downloads of our QR code, whatever it is. At that point, we have to justify it with something, and then we look into your deck for the tangible stuff that we can then sell, then we can make that decision. But podcasting is growing. There are platforms like AfriPods, shameless plug, who will give you the data behind it and allow you to track that you can then now give us so that we can justify it along with any other streaming platforms and any other advertising decisions that are being made.
Yeah, I was actually about to talk about the cross-integration of channels when it comes to, especially when you're starting out. If you're starting out and you want to monetize and all you do is just talk on your podcast and nothing else, then there's no way we're going to be able to discover you. And right now, I think it's the best time possible because TikTok can make you blow up in a second. You don't even have to do much. You don't even have to create a whole thing. You can even just have your conversation there and all of a sudden everybody knows about your podcast. So there's a lot of opportunity there. But also just being the good cop, the good cop in this conversation. I think also, I know numbers are good, but sometimes I have seen clients that invest in people with a smaller community because sometimes those with a bigger community, you're not able to track, you're not able to know how many people have actually known about your brand, how many people are interacting with your brand. But I've seen them actually see somebody and say, oh, this one has 5,000 people listening, and they'll be sure that those 5,000 people are going to listen to that episode for sure, and they'll invest in that. So sometimes it's also about if you really, truly believe in your community and you've built it and you know they'll listen to you, for sure. Sometimes I've seen clients actually invest in that. I don't know.
Can I just say something on the back of that? Yeah. There's the amount of decisions, right, that are made when you're choosing other mediums, is a lot less, right? So choose a billboard here because of this, that, the other. Now, what that means when it comes to podcasts, that there's a lot more permutations of the different parts that make it up. and your audience and the quality of your audience, right? Because of how, can I swear? Because of how disastrous,
It's your brand. Do what you need
because
to.
of how disastrous the internet has become, the communities are very important, right? So those over-index in terms of this measure that we call attention, because people will be coming to listen to your podcast. So if the radio is on and an ad plays, the attention score is slightly lower than what it would be if they're listening to your podcast and the ad plays, because you're actively engaged in doing that, right? Attention scores on podcasts rank significantly higher. So the size of your audience and those few people who are actively listening to you are worth a lot more to an advertiser, and that's why that decision could be made. I've got a few people who really like the way I train my dog, for example. That would completely turn, the decision that Pedigree Dog Food would make into investing in a podcast versus someone who has a lot of reach. Because out of the 700 people who listen to my podcast, if I said I had a booth at the dog show, right, half of them would show up, right? But we are talking about the same 500 people as you, and you've got 1 million people following you, right? So it comes back to what Tracy's talk about. What's the, sort of engagement levels that you can get? What's the authenticity? And find a smaller community that tends to be stronger, then can draw the advertisers towards it. Now, how do you prove that? Your engagement on your page, how it is that people are talking with you and amongst each other outside of your conversations, the amount of time you show up organically, and those are some of the things that we'll track, right? So talk to your communities, get them to comment and make content in and around your content, so that if I did a random search, right, through my tracking tool of the name of your podcast, organic conversation will show up. That's confidence enough for me to walk into the room and say, hey, Gadoni, advertise on this. And then very likely it could happen.
Okay, so you've touched on two things that I want to talk about. First is niche. Is it really important if I'm trying to have a podcast that is monetized to focus on niche? And should I do it based on what I want to talk about or the brands I'm attracting?
I think it's there's no right answer to that question, to be honest, because there's two ways to go about it. Niche sometimes boxes you, but also a brand would come to you because you're in that niche. It just an example would be when you look at content creators who do skincare specifically, they'll never get, say, like a Tasker or whatever to come and advertise with them. But they'll constantly be on your uncovers, your CGU, your whatever. And it's good for them, but they'll always be boxed to that particular whatever. So when you choose a niche, just die hard with that niche. That's all I'd say. Because again, not having a niche exposes you to so much, but then you also look like, okay, so where do you lie? When I want to work with you, what exactly will I, okay, today you're talking about this, tomorrow you're talking about, so there's no right or wrong answer to that. It just depends on where you want to, like, kufana gani. Yeah.
So if you want to be in niche content, you better like it.
Yeah.
Right? It better be as authentic as it can be. You shouldn't go into niche content pretending like you want to pander to brands for the advertising money, because when it doesn't come, you'll be disappointed. When it takes a long time, it'll get frustrating. You're not going to be consistent to the content, and the level of thing or product that you're going to deliver is not going to be the sort of thing that will attract the listeners or advertisers. And if you get listeners, they're not going to be engaged to the level where your first campaign would happen because you have reach, and then it won't happen because you don't have anything else out of that. But if you do have niche content, if you're doing this dog training content, you can commit. And if you're going to make content trying to attract advertisers, build your product as such. Don't pretend. Be the KISS 100 of podcasts. Everyone can advertise there. Yeah. You reach a certain amount of people. But podcasting, by its nature, because that high attention score, I have to pull out my device. I have to search the name of your pod. If I don't really want to listen to dog training stuff, it's not going to happen. It doesn't matter how much Spring Valley Kennels, which Spring Valley Kennels advertises to me. It's not going to happen, right? Because that's just not. But if you're in a niche, what's happening when people listen to, use this sort of product is they were already there. They already believed you. They already knew that you know everything there is to know about gifting, and then therefore the way your bows tie is perfect, and then therefore they should buy things from your organization. That's the sort of thing that would happen. People will disproportionately listen to what you have to say within your niche, and that's what's attractive to advertisers, right? So don't get into a niche that's not real to you, you know. I only just started wearing linen pants. I can't be a stylist. It's only happening
Believe in
now.
yourself. The second thing from the conversation before, you've talked about monetization in the same thing as niche, but I think there's different types of monetization. And I know, for example, brands, sometimes it's impact, sometimes it's profit, whatever it is. How do you know the difference? And I want to ask you specifically because I know you worked with Salam and Hello. And when they started making money, they only had like 200 subscribers on YouTube or something like that. So how do I then, and because it was for the full season, so they hadn't done anything yet necessarily to prove this is what will go with your brand. So how do I then present? Because nowadays for monetization, some podcasters want to get on board with a brand at the beginning. So how do I do it that way? How do I consider the differences in impact and profit as well when targeting a brand?
Okay, I think, so there's a couple of things. What are you selling becomes central to that value conversation of how it is that you monetize, right? So if I've got very many people listening to my podcast, even if it's in the very beginning, and this is what happens when you have a personality. I'm going to use you for an example, right? So my podcast, Afflicted by Nonsense, probably would take a while to pick up before Tracy's podcast because her audience is a lot more engaged with her, it's a lot more public, right? So Salam and Hello is in my shoes, right? It's not very public, they don't know me. But what you do is over the couple of episodes that you put out to get to 100 consistent listeners, you've built that niche and now you know what it is that you're selling. You've packaged yourselves in a very specific way that if you want to reach a Pan-African audience that's interested in the issues that will engage with you, that is cosmopolitan, then you advertise on this podcast. That is a brand manager's wet dream when you say it like that, right? So then they are going to advertise. Now, Salam and Hello sit in a situation where, and this is, you know, does my NDA cover this? The type of advertising that they got was very specific. So they knew who they were targeting in terms of advertisers. So they built their brand. Then they knew exactly what to say to the brand that they got, right? So that's like me doing 100 episodes of commentary on African basketball, and then I go straight to the NBA guys and I tell them, Bal is opening in Africa. Can I come to Kigali with you guys? Can I go to Pretoria with you guys to cover the final? I've built exactly the product that you are looking for. And then if I can package my audience and say, I'm listened to people who are born in, you know, this, 1996, going for, you know, didn't want to age myself there.
80 what?
85, actually. Like, so I've got a couple of people. So you know your audience well enough to know that I can get a pretty dedicated group of people. So if you're looking for a very particular type of advertising, then build it like that. Now, maybe I can pivot the question to you. As someone who makes content, do you want to constantly be at the bane of the advertisers, or do you just want to make the content that you want to make? Because that's a decision you have to make very early. So you package your content and you know this is the advertiser that I want and this is how you go about it, right? So does that stifle what you would end up making and then?
Yeah, I think it does, especially from a content perspective. And unfortunately, like creatives, we're not constantly, as much as we want to monetize, it comes very slowly. So we constantly want to be targeting advertisers. Like me personally, sometimes I make content that is, I'm targeting you. I'm targeting you. And yeah, and sometimes I just want to do it for fun. But you know, fun won't feed you.
Yeah, that's the thing. So, so my advice, and this is my personal advice and professional advice as well. We might be in the golden age of podcasts here, but podcasting as a platform has existed such that even what we consider popular podcasts, a lot of us are consuming international content, right? Now, because we are in our infancy, you still have that gap to do your niche and do it well and do it right and do it for long. Make your crocheting content. Get on there every time and make that crocheting content. And at some point, right, what the partnership will look like is your crocheting custom L'Oreal bags, right? Because you're so good at what you do, Yeah, this homie cooks on his balcony, and guys are there. It's just there, right? You don't have to pander. You don't have to change. Be consistent. Do you? The thing is, podcasting is about, putting out content that people are going to listen to. And if you go veer off and you do something that's offside, then now you're outside of your niche. It's not as exciting to you. It's not as fun. You're not going to get to that 100 episodes. So yes, grind it out, make it. If you're going to make it for the advertisers, know that. And there's a skill to it. Package it. I've seen beautifully packaged. You can get a sign here, right? And will not mention you. You can get 2-3 mentions, right? And that's another thing that Salam and Hello had done. So what you're getting is a value exchange over time of a very specific 7 minutes of my program where people will be engaging with your brand as they watch, right? And then obviously there are the other ones. If you have a visual podcast and I listen to podcast, it increases it. But you having segments, you can have brand and end frame. You can get the beginning boards. You can get 2 mentions. You can get the cutaway. Have those products in your monetization plan, and then that comes easier to sell. It's like, okay, cool, juice brand, you guys get spoken about because you have to talk about the polysaccharides and the amount of sugar. Water brand, you just get a strip there at the bottom. Yeah.
Well, polysaccharides. Anyway, I guess I have to read my juice boxes more. Tracy, Ryan beat me to the question to you. I wanted to find out from you. In your experience as a content creator who's also done podcasting, are there specific things you would do differently in each of the things to make yourself advertiser ready? So if your podcast still existed, are there different things based on your experience on both that you would do to present yourself to an advertiser?
Yeah, of course, there's a few things I would do. One, we've already mentioned, the thing about making yourself discoverable. I think that's one thing that I would definitely do now. The other thing would be I would invest more. I would invest in it because at first it was just all fun and games and I wanted to make money off it until I realized, it has to look good. Okay, not really look good, but there has to be some effort that has gone into it. Yeah, I think those are the things that I would generally do. But I don't think I would go back to my podcast.
You don't think you'd go back?
No, I'll leave it to.
So if I was going to start a podcast, I methodically do it. There's a formula. I don't know. There's a gentleman called Andrew Perry. He works. He spends a lot of time in Brazza Media Lab. If you can find him, he has this deck of cards. His name is Andrew Opere, right? He has this deck of cards that's called the method, right? And
the method kit.
The method
DW.
kit.
Yeah, you can get it online.
You can get it
on
online
DW.
as well.
Yeah.
Right?
The method
and
kit.
It's a detailed process about how to do things, right? If you wanted to build a shed, there's a method kit for that. If you wanted to do a project. Now, it's a stack of cards thicker than the deck that you get if you bought any standard. So you can lay them out and it's about the process. So what is my niche? Who is my audience? When do I look to monetize? They're color coded, so you can do it at any time. Even men can use them, right? So you put out the color coded things, put them down there.
What is that about men?
Okay, it's an inside.
I was going to say something.
I promise you, I just want to bet. Just allow it. Right? So you write out what you're going to do at that stage. Right? So in the very beginning, who is my audience? Am I going to get that? And once you've done that, first of all, you realize how intense this is going to be if you're going to make a monetized podcast, but you realize the detailed process that you're going to have to do. So how do I get this link on WhatsApp groups? Is it a link that's shareable? Can people swipe up on my IG? Do I also have supporting social pages? So I would make it out to be a hobby that has some duty in it, so that I know I have to post, so that I know I have to repost, so that I know I have to engage, and that's the thing that's going to build me listenership, and it's not just going to come. My homies and I are interesting. Sana, no one cares. Until I do that work of
Bad
getting...
cop.
Until I do the work of getting it out there, right? Now, there are ways that if you have a great product, there are people that you can go to that can help you package this product. Here's where I shamelessly plug us, right? Come to a team. So the one way we've pivoted in terms of the way our group works, right? So from an advertising agency to a marketing consulting group is that we now represent the creators, right? And we're now not looking for creators for our clients. We're looking for clients for our creators, right? So you Tell them, this is what your data is showing. You have a platform that you plug in and tells you, this is how your socials look like, this is what your listenership can be, right? These are the places that you need to do to now put those links that drive to your podcast. And in representing those creators, that gives us the opportunity to be a lot better at talking about these niches to the brands, right? So I'm like, this is the podcast that you need to be on. And you're going to have to be there for 12 months because they're growing and you're going to grow with them, right? So it's just making sure that we are in those places, in those ecosystems, so that we can help the creators find one another. But yes, then guide them through that process of, how are you doing this? Now, we look like other management companies because now we're not just a media agency, but yes, there are ways and means that you can go about it so that we work with you to then position yourself and put yourself in a place where advertisers are more likely to find you.
Okay, so in representing the creators and in being a content creator, right? How do you balance the creativity when you're representing the creator, where I come to you and I'm like, this is what I have? How do you balance the creativity and content integrity with commercial value for the person? So as a you know how you said sometimes I create content for targeting, sometimes it's on vibes. How do you determine the difference and how do you strike the balance if there is a balance to be stricken? Thank you.
I'm trying to figure out what the best answer for that would be. So how do you strike the balance between
your creativity and the integrity of your content so that it doesn't feel like I'm watching you and you're just selling? Because there are some people who sometimes you're just like, girl.
Can you avoid it? Anyway,
you're like, you're selling. I love you, but like
You have to lean in. You have to lean in. If you're going to sell.
Yeah.
Make it cute, make it nice, but don't deviate.
But also,
but how do you determine that in your content? Because I'm selling, but then the reason you built your audience is not because you are selling.
Yeah.
So how do I maintain cutesy, demure, whatever it is, but get the money?
I have actually been in that position where now my social media channels also kind of look like a supermarket, of some sort. But I think you always have to come back to, you always have to ask yourself why you started it in the first place. Like, you can never forget the passion point of it. As much as you want to make money and everything, you can never forget that point. So I think you have to kind of like balance it. Take on the selling ones and also go back to your passion points. Yeah, so you have to kind of like balance them all together. But also sometimes when something looks too hard, like you're going to oversell it, just say no to it. Yeah.
I think
like now if you ask me to sell land, surely, how am I gonna do that?
I mean,
it's not gonna look cute. It's not gonna look cute. Yeah.
So at the point where you're making that decision of, we're gonna monetize this podcast, if you have segments and you've structured your podcast, then it's not going to interfere with your creativity because you know exactly where the points that I'm going to sell to you value and this is worth X amount. Now, if you don't have that sort of structure and you're worried about what's my podcast going to become if I just sell out to the advertiser, that's a good place to be. It means that you care, right? So you just keep making your podcast and then just keep advertising to your niche and keep talking to those people because it'll come. It'll come eventually, hopefully. One thing that we try to do, right, as the advertisers, you can allow me, I'll speak first. We try not to meddle with your editorial, which means the quality of your content, right? And the reason why I would say that, right, is because that allows you to be authentic, right? If we leave you alone and we tell you, okay, cool, here's the thing, do the thing, then your audience will get it. But the times when we've been like, no, say it like this, then that becomes a problem. Now, if you're in a brand which could cause potential harm, like, fast vehicles, booze, then there might be some other rules that, like the simplest ones. Don't do a free pour it in a measuring thing before you do it, right? So if those are the things that are now affecting your editorial, then that's a problem. But let me speak for myself now. We try as much as we can not to mess with your editorial because it then gets to a very tricky ethical line. Because I'm sitting there on this side of the boardroom table with potentially millions in advertising budget, but only if you don't talk about a certain topic, only if you talk about it a certain way, only if you flout your values. Then we are messing with your editorial. Or we say, no, you have to put a big flashy screen in the front, and your podcast was always about chilling and doing homely stuff, right? So that, I would tend to stay away from situations like that. And if you are in those situations, bet on yourself, bet on your integrity. If you need the bag, take the bag, and then don't beat yourself up about it. Take the bag, and then figure out your morals later, or your ethics.
Yeah, but speaking for us in the advertising space, yeah, I have also, just because people want to monetize, I'll just be honest, there are brands that want things said the way they want. Yeah, and it's, you take it or you leave it. So I think, like you said, choose whether you're going to take it or leave it.
The other thing about like selling out your content, your editorial, just to attract brands, if you do that, that's now who you are, right? So you don't want your Instagram page to just be like a supermarket shelf. Because when advertising pivots, which eventually does, right? Millennials, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, whatever the next big thing we are told about, and the AI agent decides, right? Then people will move off it, and then you'll have been in this place where you are bag chasing. As opposed to, if you kept your thing on dog training, now it's real and it's there, and that community will always be there. And that is what you could quote unquote monetize, right? So you're monetizing when we look at the value that you're giving us, your audience will always be a big value that you can exchange for advertising shillings. Yeah.
How do I present the audience's value? So you've mentioned, okay, I'm talking about dog training or crocheting. Maybe that's what my podcast is about. How do I demonstrate value beyond the numbers? Because if it's something like dog training, crocheting, or something very niche, my numbers are the 200s, 500s, valuable, but then just small on a scale. So how do I then present and demonstrate value to a brand as a creator or as a podcaster based on what I know my community is worth?
So, like, and I'd love to talk about this. There's a way that the podcast can look where I can sponsor the podcast, right? So I'm sponsoring the Afflicted by Nonsense podcast, and the brand is giving the agency money, or directly I'm getting this funding, and then what I'm doing is doing certain mentions within it, right? What I would have sold to the advertiser at that point, regardless of the size of my content, is the engagement of my audience. The reason you're giving me money directly to mention your brand on my podcast is because you believe the people who I'm talking to have some sort of purchasing power that you'd like to get behind. That's only one way of advertising on a podcast. If you're part of a network, right, similar to what AfriPods does, right, the advertising given to AfriPods then is placed on your podcast, and the people who are listening, if we're both listening and you like true crime and I like, dogs, you'll hear something different from even if we listen to the exact same podcast. So your monetizing model also matters in terms of what then the brands see. Because if the brands see AfriPods as a place where I can get a network of podcasts to advertise on, all I'm looking for is for engaged audiences, and then I'm likely to say, it's a dog show where everyone's welcome, as opposed to the specific training. So then we also think about what's the creative and the copy that goes into that sort of placement of advertising. So depending on how your podcast is monetized, you could get a mix and match of all these different things. Now, if you're looking for them to invest in you, then you show the quality of your audience by, this is the engagement that I get. Whenever I put out an episode, I have 200 subscribers, I have 200 listens. I'm netting a lot. Now, the math, how you present it, I'll let the creator do it.
I wasn't going to talk about I was going to add on to what what you're saying. What I've also seen podcasters or other brands invest in when it comes to value, podcasts that are doing more beyond than just sitting behind the microphone, and they're making the brands engage with their audience physically. I'll give an example of Joyride podcast. That's the podcast that came to my mind. And they had a whole engagement where CeraVe gave them a partnership for like a whole year for all of their Joyride, what were they called? Joyride tours or something. Yeah, yes. Because now the audience is moved from just being behind, listening to them, to now meeting them physically. So I think that was also value. One. And also, what Mike Check did the other day with the 24-hour, I feel like that's valuable. There was people constantly like coming in, leaving, coming in, leaving. So I think finding ways of giving value beyond just like the numbers. Yeah, the numbers of people listen to me, etc, etc. Now you can even come and meet them. I think that gives them value.
Okay. What are red flags you look for at when you're looking at a podcast and you're just like, I'm not giving the brand this? What are some of the red flags that would stop you from giving a podcast money?
Unfortunately, let me be bad cop a bit. Sometimes the topic of discussion is a red flag. Yeah, I have been in rooms where, like, just because they probably talked about sex and that's all they talk about, and they don't talk about it in a productive way, they've already just been cancelled from that brand deal. Or probably, I think that was the first thing that I've thought about. You can go next as you think about the next
brand
one.
safety is going to be big, right? So if anything, anywhere on your platform could be badly linked to my water brand, then I start to panic. I start to have red flags regardless of how big your audience is. If you don't have any structure, if you don't post regularly, if you don't have, like Tracy was saying, things beyond just your, and I'm not talking about the activities. Like you don't have an IG page, you don't have a TikTok page, you're not present on any other platforms.
You have poor quality.
Yay. Those just the technical things. I'm asking, okay, I'm going to give you 100,000. What am I going to get back? Oh, we can fix it the other way we want. You want to, you don't have Simamo. Those inconsistencies in what it is that you're saying, you don't have any reports, like, then I'm antsy in terms of spending the client's money or the brand's money on that. And those,
A huge red flag is also when your media kit only just talks about you and you and you and you and nothing about the value that you can give a brand. Yeah, so that's, and also something else. People in advertising and clients usually talk. So if you're a difficult person to work with, you're a red flag.
Bruh, you know, the visual for this said we're going to be giving industry secrets. That's the secret there. That's a real one.
That's the real one.
So-and-so is difficult to work with, can take money out of your pocket. And it's so unfortunate. And then it'll be like, but me, I had a good experience there, but me, I don't know. And at some point, it will be about the work, right? We asked for 7 mentions, we got 3. That one now is your bad.
Yeah.
But you sent your invoice, then you start calling the finance guy 17 times. You get your 1 check and that's it. Like, we owe you your money, we'll pay you your money, but, you know, it's tough. Or we don't get how you plan to integrate us with the brand until the minute before you're recording, and then now you need us to approve now.
Yeah.
You know, it's already been said we had a very limited time to make this decision, and then you're being difficult about the creative process. Or you agree to certain terms and then you don't. You know, you renege. Like, no, I want my contract now. Hey, like there's, and that's the thing that's going to be said now. Were you frustrated that day? Did Mercury in retrograde? Possibly. But you're now difficult to work with, and it's bad. It's going to affect your bag.
Leave Mercury alone. Does social media add value, and does it matter audio versus video? Because there's a conversation in podcasting where some people are just like, audio is the only way. Some people are like, if you're not in video, you're not going anywhere. Okay, that's fine. Now for monetization, does it matter if I'm audio only? Can I still make money? Or do I have to have additional value with video? And do I have to have additional value now with social media, presenting those numbers as well on my deck? Because sometimes maybe it's not just this is who listens, it's this is who engages. Does all of that matter?
So there's a couple of things that you have to think about there, that whole ecosystem. So we spoke about that whole train where, you know, the brand is different places, right? So the audio versus video question, that's a purist thing, right? So I'll be listening to my podcast as I walk up and down Busy Beach or whatever the case may be, right? So then that's the only part where I'm going to be listening. Now, for discoverability, right? The video podcast, like watching a video podcast is a tedious thing, right? If you sit down there and you're committing to 2 hours of, you know, seriously committed, so a lot of it. But what that's good for, if you only do audio, you don't have clickbait for the internet, That's what those videos are for. And a lot of us say, yeah, listen to such and such podcast. Bro, you watch the TikTok plots. You don't actually listen to the podcast, right? So, and you're a fan of the podcast, and that's what they're for. So when they do now present these numbers, they can say we have 1 million guys on TikTok, but then we have 17,000 downloads on our audio. So that's why those things matter. So traditionally, if you have a super engaged audience, these guys have come to listen to me about a very important thing to them, dog training, right? That's now not necessarily visual, but now dog training is visual, right? So me, the non-visual dog training podcast versus the visual dog training podcast, the other one get discovered more, and then it's more attractive to advertisers. So that's what will end up happening. So to your audience member who really loves your niche, is this important? You could flip a coin. But to your advertiser, the easier that you can get discovered and the easier that you are to find and get in front of audiences in whatever way, shape, and form. The little clips that you put on TikTok, the little posts that you have on your other socials, those all spell value that you can exchange, make you be able to be discovered more, and then potentially a larger audience, and then potentially more money. So yes, it does matter. And you should consider how it is you're going to get people to discover your podcast, or how you're going to get fans of your podcast with whatever format it is that you decide to have.
Okay.
I think they complement each other, really. Like, it's not even a question about audio versus visual and what, like, just what he said. And unless I don't know what brand wants to be listened to, they want to be seen. They all, unless, I don't know, a singing brand or something. Yeah, all brands want to be seen.
I mean, maybe they want to be listened to. I don't know.
Probably.
It's because my podcast is audio only. Anyway, we've talked about some of the mistakes that podcasters make. Yeah. What are, apart from talking about self-only on the deck, what are mistakes you've seen podcasters make when trying to create or pitch their work for advertisers?
It's generic.
Yeah, not like, just like I said, no value, just talking about themselves.
And then it's a pitch deck. So it's like, this is my podcast and these are my rates, right? As opposed to, this is my podcast, this is who I listen to, this is why they listen to me, this is your brand, this is why your brand is appealing to the people that I listen to, this is how I could tell your story to the people who listen to my podcast, and this is how much money I'd like for it for a year. Or for 9 months, or for 3 months. And then if you come on for 6 months, this is what you get. So like some effort in terms of understanding me and understanding.
Yeah.
So it's pretty bland.
Also, overpromising, I think, is a mistake. And then once you pitch yourself, I think it's important to follow up. Like, people just give up from the first step. You send it and then that's it. Yeah.
If it's your first time, say it. Say don't yet have, just be pretty honest. And many times you'll either get guidance, or you get advice, you get something that will help you the next time. Because overpromising is a real thing. They'll say, I'm going to be able to do this, that, the other, and then they just can't.
Okay, but
It's a
will
bad
they
experience
actually
all around.
help, or will they take advantage of you if it's your first time?
You need
is
to
the question.
package it so and so,
Yeah.
and then
Okay, so it's possible to ask for advice from the professionals.
it's advised.
It's advised to ask for advice. Okay.
And then also something maybe that I saw recently that maybe would benefit people who are just starting out is collaboration. Like, I was so impressed when I saw Financially Incorrect and So This Is Love come together to do something. Like, I never in my wildest dreams did I ever think something like that would happen. So maybe it's time for podcasters to start collaborating more. That way you get discovered, and that way you get brands knowing about you. Yeah.
Okay, so I have told the brand it's my first time. They have come back to me with rates. How flexible should I be in my rates, whether it's my first time or if I've been doing it for a while? How flexible should a creative be? What are the negotiating terms? What advice would you give them in that space? Don't give out secrets. I'm not trying to get you fired.
Okay,
Let's
so-
move to Anzie Mali.
So it depends on what you want and why you made this podcast, right? So if I made this podcast about training dogs and this is my passion project, and you're like, you guys, we enjoy your podcast so much, we'd like to put some money, then I have to start to think, what if this happens again? How don't I undercharge? Right? And that also comes with a little bit of, I can finance my own operation, so I'm not reliant on the advertising and things like that. Now, if you are reliant on the advertising, you obviously have a few more considerations to make, right? So this is what you've been offered. What I would say is, what's my input cost? How much is it costing me to put this thing out? How much more on top of that do I need to be comfortable? That becomes your floor. You're not going any lower than that. You're happy to reject that work because it's going to take money out of your podcast pocket to make this product, right? But if once you have that and you know the lower one, consider how much more is it going to cost me to extract that much more value. So if I do 2 more posts, can I charge 16 times more? Can I charge 60,000 more, right? So what's the level of extraction that you can do? And then now you can say, okay, then I'm going to be able to do this, then I'm going to be able to do this. And structuring your podcast as a product up front helps you know that different things have different values. And if you set it up that way, then you know if I do 4 mentions and I do 2 reels, it's not going to take away from me, but I can make the money. And then okay, fine, I'll give you 1 more reel. So you have to know what your math looks like. You have to know what your input costs look like. You have to know what's valuable to them also, right? Say, I will collaborate. I'll go on that other person's podcast, but that's going to mean I'm doing mentions in a place that was similarly out, right? Now, if it's your first time, mention those things up front. Be the one to suggest, for a collaboration, it'll be this much, right?
And I can give you value so that
Exactly.
I can do a post online or something. Like, offer something more so that the price doesn't go
Down.
lower. Something that won't
Right?
cost you
So
much.
you package this thing and it's very clear where it is you're selling what. First timer, whether you're really good at it. And obviously the more you have, right, as the different ways of you promoting your podcast, then the different ways that you have that you can be offering value for exchange.
Okay. Did you want to add something?
No.
Okay. I have 2 more questions to ask them. After I finish my 2 questions, I'm coming to you to ask questions. I say this every time. I love you, Kenyans. I love you so much. Mine is not a question. It's a comment. Not today. Okay? So when I come to you, I want Excellent. Not a co. We'll comment after. Correct? Are we together? We agree? I'm not hearing agreement. Do we agree? I love it. Okay. My second to last question for you. What advice would you give podcasters who are approaching advertisers for the first time? Outside of say it's my first time. What else would you tell them to do?
Pitch it ambitiously. Sell the thing that made you start the podcast, right? Now, if you started a podcast because you and the homies are funny, that's going to be a hard sell, right? There's a gentleman there who has a passion about mental health and he really wants to get his message out. Do that, because however many listeners, right, that you get will be more than they had before people started listening to your podcast. So pitch a strong partnership, pitch all these other things that you can grow, pitch growing together. That's what you do as a first timer. Now, as a person who has a podcast and then no advertising revenue, right, the thing that I do there is pitch my community and then see how the advertiser takes that.
So I'd written down actually 4 things. So I'd said lead with value first, then show proof, like what have you been doing, then also keep it short. Keep it short, like
What
don't
is
say
short?
too many things. We only have 2 days to do these things. We have timelines to meet. So keep it short and sweet, and then also be professional. Yeah.
Okay, be professional. My last question before I come to you people, please get your questions ready. If there were 3 things you could give a podcaster starting today, advice, 3 things they should do today to attract advertisers in the next 6 to 12 months, what would the 3 things be?
I'd say define like your audience first. Like, who do you want to talk to? Do you want to be a niche? Do you want to be someone who talks to everybody? That's the first thing that I'd say. The second thing is I'd say like put a structure. How do you want your podcast to look like? How do you want it to have segments? Do you want it like structure it? And I think the third thing I'd say is like learn fast. Like also research and learn. ask other podcasters, like, what are you doing? How do you track, like, your metrics? How do you measure? How do you get your data? How have you gotten to where you are today? I think people usually just start and think, I don't need to get advice from anybody. I think those would be my 3 things. Yeah.
I didn't write any notes.
Yeah, I did. I don't know.
Yeah, prepared.
Yeah.
We can tell who the index 1 is in class.
It's
Yeah.
okay. It's okay. Let's see if we can do this off the top of the dome, right? So 3 things.
Wow, index 1.
I got you. So volume of content. I need you to churn out content, right? Consistency, right? So those 2 things will sort of go hand in hand. Yeah. Now, your lead content, which is your podcast, that's where I need your consistency. Everywhere else, I need your volume, right? I need enough cuts from here so that I'm seeing it all sorts of places. It's showing up in the WhatsApp group, like, hey guys, has anyone listened to this? Is this thing any good? Should we take it, right? So that between your volume and your consistency, just as much of it as you can. And then the last one would be experimentation, right? There's so many niches that are untapped that could be extremely profitable.
Dog training.
Dog training, man. Please.
We leave that one to you.
Right? But you see, so there's a couple of things which have landed in your heads today. Number 1, dog training. Number 2, juice and water. For sure. I've landed them in your head. And that's what podcast advertising should be. That's what it should feel like. You guys are now wondering about who trains my dog, just because I've mentioned it a couple of times. But, right? So you're a first-time person trying to get here. I need you to be consistent. I need you to put in a lot of volume. I need you to experiment. Experiment with formats. Go out, man on the street. Discover how people are finding out about your podcast. And at some point, you'll figure out a ratio between these 3 elements where you're putting out a volume of content that you're comfortable with, that is of a quality that can bring people in, that has your audience giving you feedback that's allowing you to iterate your podcast. Then now you're able to tweak it, right? So you've sent out your proposal to Tracy. Tracy has told you not this time, right? What can I do better? Says, I just didn't understand it. You have too many slides. That's feedback that you need to take so that when you pitch to Ryan, you now have fewer slides. So also volume in the number of proposals that you're sending out. Get good at doing this thing as part of it as a business muscle that you can build, right? Then if you're making a podcast and you intend to monetize it, you're going to have to run it like a business. How much money do you want to make? You want those, couple of 100,000 shilling rate cards. How much are you putting in? What's your sound like? What's your light like? And if they're going to be investing in you, on your down days, you better make a down day podcast, right? It's not going to be an up day every day, but that's where the consistency comes in. Hey guys, today we trained and the dog ran out and he almost bit a kid. I have to focus on this guy's discipline. Bruh, you guys are hooked. A dog training podcast
But what
available.
did the child do, though? What did the child do? That's the question. Okay, I'm coming to you for the questions. Do we have questions from the audience? If we do, my kind request on behalf of the tech team is please stand up as you ask your question. And okay.
I was hoping you wouldn't say we stand up. Anyway, hi. My name is Kendi. I'm curious if there's any advertising you've seen on a podcast, whether local or international, that you think has been done well, and if there's a lesson there in how they've integrated that advertising. Because we've spoken a lot about, the brand side, etc. But then also sometimes the ads that come from podcasts are like, hi, we're talking about dog training, and then here is Sarah V. So I wonder if there's any advertising that you've seen that has stood out for you and what people can learn from that.
I think we can both take that. First, I'd say they've been visual. I don't think it's so amazing. I think just by the fact that podcasting is still growing, I think we're still learning so much about advertising on podcasts. But I'd say when you look at Mic Check podcasts, they always have Gilbeys on the table that they serve the guests, but they never talk about the Gilbeys.
Yeah, so
And they're literally advertising Gilbeys. So that's one that I'd say. Yeah.
So I'm currently based in Tanzania.
Yeah.
And there are 2 things that I've seen on podcast advertising that I've not seen. I want to launch them for here us now.
Tell
The
us so we
first
can launch
is
them.
a squeeze back on a TikTok, right? So for those of you who don't know what a squeeze back is, right? So let's see something that's a bit. You're watching Love is Blind, right? Say it wasn't on Netflix, right? Or you're watching something and then the screen moves into the corner, and then on the side and under you can see an advertisement, right? Liquid fruit, whatever juice it is that's there, water, juice. See, we're inside, we're doing well. It's a little puppy running around being chased. Red Bull does it really well, Guinness does it really well. So that's called a squeeze back. It happens mostly on TV programs, right? So it'd be the middle of the day, the thing would squeeze back, and then it would say they're Limara. Now you can tell how old I am, right? But I saw that on a TikTok, which so it's the studio conversation, but then this TikTok has a squeeze back, and I was like, this is super innovative as a format, right? And these are things that you only get them in Africa. I don't think they're innovating like this out there. The other one that I've quite liked, and it's happened over a number of podcasts, is where the podcast host is the one that does the ad, and the switchover isn't obvious, right? So I listened to Trevor Noah's What Now podcast, and he had very, very recently he's doing a brand deal with a taxi hailing company, and he'll say, where am I? And then they have a conversation about the streets in that place, and then at the end of it, say, this is brought to you by the taxi hailing company, right? So that I find a really well integrated ad, right? Esther Perel talks about how she's shopping at, certain places, and then how what she's wearing now is going to keep her warm, and it sounds like the ad is part of what she's talking about. She'll do it for 3-4 minutes and then move out. Now, visual podcasts have the opportunity to do it also quite well, where they cut in a section of what would be the ad, but it's still them in studio, right? Hey, guys, when I take a break from podcasting, I'm always using Blue Band because sandwiches made with Blue Band are this, that, the other, right? So that's the sort of thing that integrating the advertising there. Now, it's really organic, it feels like, and that really feels nice to, I'm still consuming my content because that being yanked away to be told about a certain, and other such like, right? So that takes away from it. So that I've quite liked those integrations, and I do think the events that Salam and Hello has had, those are absolutely fabulous, where you get to meet people and you're doing a live recording, all that stuff has been pretty interesting to see.
Excellent. Do we have another question from the audience? Bill?
Hello. Dog training needed.
He's trying to figure out how to monetize on Instagram.
Hi guys, I'm a bit shy, but I hope I'll. Okay, my name is Abigail Diana. My podcast is called Ongeza Volume.
You didn't raise your hand when I asked for podcasters, but it's fine.
I'm shy. It's crazy because I'm also an MC. When I'm in the audience, it's difficult. Yeah. Anyway, so I have 2 questions. I hope they won't be too obvious. The first question would be, it's actually possible for a podcast to pitch to agencies so that when the relevant clients come on board, okay, yeah, that's good. Okay, I've gotten the answer. So that when the client, when you have a relevant client, you're able to mix and match a particular podcast or a brand or a platform to that particular client. So that's my first question. And second question would be, where do you pitch? And my third question, would be, say I'll give myself as an example. Assuming I am a brand by myself as a content creator, and I have my podcast that is also a different brand. So when you're pitching to either advertisers or a client, what would you recommend in such a situation? Because you said when you're doing the media kit, you should maybe talk a bit less about yourself and more about your brand or podcast. So in such a situation, how do you balance out that, hey, I'm Abigail Diana, I'm the founder of Ongeza Volume. So do you sell yourself? Do you sell your brand? Yeah,
I'll take the first part, and then you take the one about being a creator.
Oh, you've given me that.
Mbaya sana. It's just throwing under the bus. Work at agencies. What
He
do we
said,
do?
I am done being bad cop. He's done.
Right?
Okay.
So come to places like this, right? Hard cold call, send your deck out, try see if you can get it in front of anyone, book a meeting. That's usually good. So I'm under pressure to get more avenues for my clients to spend so they can reach the right audiences in the right way. Ongeza volume, if I didn't know it today, now I do, and it becomes an option. So that's what happens. Send the email out, find out. Now, you're going to have to think about it and customize this deck, hopefully outside of Canva. Right? But my agency represents different clients from Tracy's, right? Or sometimes the same ones, right? How do you sell to the ones who are mine? I'm the water guys, the juice guys are on that side, right? How does your deck then look different, and how do you go into that meeting approaching the different things, right? And then with regards to the personality and the product, how much of that is intertwined? How much of that are you looking to sell? Does the product exist because the person exists? So they are archetypes of what this is now being called in the future as we go in. And that's called the CEO founder, right? So I'm similar to that. Ryboy Cocktails doesn't exist outside of Ryan Majiwa. So if I was to pitch a product, Ryboy Cocktails, what it looks like is that Ryboy Cocktails as a platform is as good as it is because I've been a cocktail expert for 10 years. Right? The reason why Ongeza Volume is what it is because the personality that's there. Now, as you monetize it, what am I selling? So a post on my page is different from a post on Ryboy's page, and separate those pieces of content out, and then you can know how to go about it. But that's really, you do want to be able to sell yourself, but enough such that it justifies, or not even justifies, that it gives a platform to your podcast. It gives them some way that they're linked.
Yeah. And when it comes, so your first question was on pitching to an agency so they can link you up to a brand. It's possible. It has happened before. The first thing I'd say is information about the clients that different agencies handle is out there. Like literally today you can go to the Creative Edge website and you'll be able to see almost all the clients that we handle. So when you're sending out a proposal to the agency, even be specific with the brand that you want to handle. When I was handling CeraVe, when Joyride sent the specific proposal to CeraVe to ask them for, come and be part of our tours, this is what we can offer you, and this is what we want from you. So go out there, look at the different agencies. All the information is out there on the brands that they handle, and then be specific with what you want to do with them. If you generalize it, it's also sometimes difficult for us to think about, like, okay, I don't know now which brand do I place you? I have so many campaigns, but if I remember this proposal that specifically came in and said, I want to do this and this with this brand, it makes it easier for us.
And we have 2 days to do it. So the more specific
we have 2 days. We have 2 days to turn around a campaign.
Say, yes, this is right instinctively.
Timelines.
So yeah.
Okay, another question I had seen. Wow, hands. Okay.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
My name is Chengo from LK Podcast, and my question is...
Ongeza Volume.
LK. L and a K.
Okay.
Yeah, my question is, do you think it's better for me to pitch or for them to notice me? Because I feel like it's more advantageous if they see me and they say, we like what you're doing, we think it'll be beneficial for us. Because I feel from that point, the compromise will be like more of a win-win. Then when I pitch, now I have to follow more of their rules. But if they come to me, they need me more than I need them.
Hey.
I take it. Yay. So if you're ready, if you want to wait for them to come to you, or go for it. Go for it. How long can you wait?
Yeah.
Are your pockets deep enough to fund your podcast until they come along? Right? Those are the considerations that you have to make. Now, if you made a podcast from passion, wait it out. Right? Let them come to you, have all the negotiating power. I hope this goes well for you. I love your podcast in the future, right? Now, if you're a startup podcast and you're just rough and tumbling it, be prepared to wait. But you're going to have to do all the other things, right? Yeah. Where are your clips for these other places? Are you on other podcasting platforms? Are you talking to other people? How are you getting your podcast discovered? Because even as you wait, you have to be doing something about it. You can't just have gold behind the wall and not tell anyone you have to at least put a sign that says buy gold here. And then when people come behind the wall, you jack them, right? So you can't just have the podcast and do nothing about it and say, when they come, again, I'm going to charge them a bomb. Yes, it will happen, but again, now it won't be the same as, And don't worry too much about having to negotiate, right? Because you go to them and you pitch them and you have your hard lines where you've talked about what your numbers are and you have your non-negotiables. Like, I'm not going to change my editorial. I'm not going to change these 2-3 parts of my personality. Then you can come to the negotiating table and say, for what you're asking, and it's also good to listen. Especially if you're a startup podcast and you don't have that much funding, listen, what is it that you guys want? A logo in the bottom corner. That doesn't compromise my integrity. It doesn't compromise the quality of my content. It's something that I'm willing to give up, but it's going to cost you a bit more, or this is what I'm going to be able to do for you for the amount of money you have. So don't walk away from the negotiating table just because you're the one who had to pitch. Pitch and then come with your things, figure out where your line is that you're not going to go beyond, and then still make yourself present. The power that you're going to have to negotiate when they come to you is not going to be that much more different. I promise.
I'd say also determine if you can say no. Because like Tracy mentioned before, not all money is good money. So if you can say no, you can wait it out. Or you can pitch knowing that if the wrong person comes, you'll just be like, no, it doesn't work with my brand. So no should be important in your conversations. Okay. I feel like the hands are increasing. Are they increasing or decreasing?
So my name is Ajuma. My podcast is called Crime KE. It's a crime podcast that documents crime stories from Kenya. So I have a question. So my audience is 90% Kenyan, and they are very engaging. That's what I love about my audience. But the thing is, when I created the podcast, I wanted to center it around the victims of crime. So I have found it hard to monetize because it's, I don't know if it's a conscience issue, because now I don't want to advertise and make it seem like I am using this victim story to make money. Help me.
I honestly don't have an answer to that one.
Right? So you're in category one of the podcast that I'm talking about, where you have a passion for this thing and you want to continue making money in and around it. Now, if I have an advertisement for Blue Band before your person is killed, I'm not going to want that. I'm not going to put that no, it's not going to work, right? Yeah. But what are the brands that you want to be able to partner with? Right? Yeah, old people's health insurance, I can see it. I can see it now. What does your audience like? What does the audience enjoy? You could have a podcast and not have this thing being monetized, right? But if you want to monetize your podcast, like this podcast, the one that you're on, honestly, your best bet is going to be on a podcast network where advertising is distributed through your podcast and the relevance is made out of your tags, right? So the other things that I've consumed on the internet, I have parents who are aging, I've got this, that, the other, and then I listen to the Crime KE podcast. Let's see, have you planned for your future? Yeah, that one is relatively okay, right? But it's going to be served into your podcast programmatically. This is not something that you have control over. What's the deal that you have with these guys? But a brand partnership, unless you're pitching to Lee Funeral Home, there's...
Or maybe it's about... because you have mentioned that you have a very engaging audience. I don't know, maybe it's about bringing them to a room and they actually pay to listen to a live podcast session and you're monetizing it from that perspective and not from a brand perspective.
I think that raises a good point. What does then monetization look like for you, because of the niche that you've chosen and because of how engaged your audience is and because of what the ambition is you have for your podcast? Then you can structure your monetization away from
brands,
the traditional brand deals.
Yeah, and figure out also, if you want traditional brand, how to make what you're doing outside attractive to the traditional brand. So whether it's going to the universities like Joy did, if that's where they'll come in, let them come in there. Yeah.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Are you not happy to be here? All right, I'm enjoying the conversations. I hope you guys are enjoying too. So my question goes to all of you, the panelists here. So what should advertising agencies do more to identify and discover podcasters? It's a different ball game from traditional media. I worked in traditional media for a couple of years, I think a decade, and it's easy to walk to the media house. But how do you guys identify podcasters and maybe see, can we do business? Can we partner with them? How should that be the challenge to advertisers to identify these guys and see how they can partner up and do business instead of just waiting for the podcast to pop and they bring the business?
Okay, I can go first. So there are a couple of ways, and I think as the world is evolving, it's becoming easier for us to discover podcasters. So first of all, we are here, we are discovering. Ongeza volume.
Yeah, but
and then
Crime KE, two podcasts. Please put these down on your list.
Yeah, there's that. But then also, the good thing is a lot of advertising agencies are now incorporating tools, like very interesting tools, where right now, if I go and just search for podcasters in Kenya, I'll see quite a lot of podcasts, like interesting tools that we have. Also, AI helps, like an easy ChatGPT search will give me so many podcasts, which we usually do when we're given campaigns and we need to search for podcasters. To be honest, like you have to make yourself discoverable on TikTok, on everything, so that when we search, we're able to see. That's the simple answer.
So how that conversation usually goes is like, Tracy, do you know a podcast I can advertise my maize on?
Bad cop. This is a bad cop.
That's how that conversation goes.
But it's true. That's how the conversation goes in the office. Nani anajua podcaster mwenye anaongeleleanga?
Exactly, right? So what we can do more, and I think that's an interesting question, we can participate in more forums like this, right? We can be a bit more transparent about what the process of getting advertising looks like. We can have conversations about the criteria that it takes and what it's going to cost and what money we have available for it, right? We could come to podcasting events. Now, what you have to realize is that we also do that in our private capacities. When I go there and sit at an event, right, I'm coming there as Ryan, the team lead, and as also Ryan, the person who listens to podcasts. But in terms of people who have the job that I have, we are not many. We are not everywhere. So there'll be new podcasts cropping up everywhere. And if the expectation is that one of us is there to discover, it's going to be a bit harder. So our thing is, we can be honest, we can come out as much as we can, but the tools ultimately are going to be what we rely on. Because we have, X amount of time to turn around a brief. And we have 2 days to turn around a brief. There's limited information. So when we do use, and the tools for discovery it's irrespective of you. If your podcast is good and I put a search term up in the tool, if you've coded your podcast right? So Kenyan, at the very least, you'll pop up, right? So it's my responsibility to not listen to just the homie in the office who likes podcasts. I have to do a bit more discovery, right, as the agency. And then we are transparent with you. We hopefully vet everyone with the same sort of standard and then give everyone a fighting chance to get some advertising. Now, we still are beholden to our brands because they have a sort of ratio of return on investment that they're looking for. And on the days when we are really good at our jobs, we can get a startup podcast a decent amount of budget that they can now prove themselves on. But we need your help and we need your podcast to be good, clear, brand safe and all that sort of stuff.
Shameless plug
And discoverable.
for AfriPods is reach out to us. We will give you the podcasts. If you're an agency advertiser, we have access to podcasters. You can write us an email, sales@afripods.com. Genuinely, no, it's something we are trying to get, because this is a conversation that a lot of, how do you bridge the podcasters and the people with the money as a hosting platform? That's part of what we do. So sales@afripods, if you're an advertiser looking for specific podcasts, write to us. We might be able to plug you into the podcast that you need across the continent. Wow. Okay, next question. I see 2 hands. Are we done with the 2 hands? After 2 hands, we're done. Okay, 3 hands. After 3 hands, we're done. Yes, because I've taken too much time. Yeah, there's...
Hi, everyone.
Okay.
Once again, my name is Sam. I have 2 questions. I'll be brief. Firstly, so I created this group. It's a community in WhatsApp where people come together to talk about these issues. And the question is, how do I measure and present the impact of my community when talking to potential sponsors and collaborators or or media? And my second question, I'll be talking about mental health. So what if my niche is broad, like mental health? How do I still make it appealing to sponsors?
So,
Thank you.
thanks for the question, sir. I think WhatsApp is very difficult because it doesn't inherently have a measure, and I can't tell from an investment point of view how much I'm going to get back, right? So you guys, we have great quality conversations about different topics, and the 16 people in the WhatsApp group are all engaging, but there's no way of monetizing that. There's no way of exchanging the value of that with me, right? Now, if you are talking about mental health and that's your niche, there are going to be either direct or indirect or subsidiary industries to what it is that you're talking about, right? Who can really stand to talk to the audience that you're talking to. So the reason why your audience continues to listen to you more than likely will be why your advertiser comes, right? So they're coming there to listen to what you're saying about mental health and the challenges that it faces. So here talking to either families that have been affected or people who are trying to prevent it, people who are looking for information. There's going to be industries that can offer you stuff there, from comfortable clothing to health and industry. So you're going to also have to do some research to figure out what is the need of my audience that I can exchange as value to the advertisers.
I would say also figure out how to make the money, how to make in your WhatsApp community, find ways to make the numbers count. So things like polls, things like that you can say, I have 100 people, and then 40 of them did it, so you can say this percentage of this. So people like numbers. So if you can say 45% of them said this versus just using polls and stuff like that. So if you can create numbers from what you have, then you should be able to then translate it to something that the advertisers would take. Okay, 3 more questions. 1, 2, 3.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lea Kigondo. I'm a host of We Are Fio, and we currently also started doing community events. We have one on Saturday. So follow us to get to know about the event. My question, I'm more interested in working with creatives in terms of preparing them and marketing them. So what do you look for in terms of working with creatives? How do you identify? Do they come to you for you to consult for them as a marketing agency? Or how does that engagement look like? And how can someone get to know more details about such a program?
Where is the Numaya tent in this building? You come see me in Numaya tent, but we have tools.
Yeah.
We have tools.
Same.
Yeah, we discovered using the tools. So we have a niche, for example. I think banking was spoken about earlier, financial responsibility. And I have a brief that's the outcome that my client would want, and then I have some creatives that are out there in the world. How do I discover them? I go into the tool, right? And that's when I'm positioning them for brand. Now, when I'm looking for teams or creators to work with as my team so that we can manage them, it then comes down to networking, right? So there's this, I went to Embe Creatives recently, place where I'd never been. Very interesting people, nothing like me. And I'm like, we need to be talking to all these people all the time to keep a pulse on culture. There are sometimes a young person in the office will come and say, I've set us up a meeting with so-and-so. Now, when they come in, they're raw. But what they've got is a dream, and they've got 1,000 followers. And with that, we can figure out what it is that they need to do. Now, the discovery of them in the tool and the initial conversations don't cost them anything. When they now start to put in the effort and they would like to monetize the effort that they've done, then now we get into this place where what we'll exchange is your tracking data for our ability to monetize your content and then take a percentage. Right? So we're not coming to get your money before you start making money. And we will train you up until that point, but it's only as far as you can go. Because we are now going to then represent you to brands and then tell you, pitch this like this, pitch this like this, and then we figure that out. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So it's a lot of tools and a lot of word of mouth, a lot of community right back.
Okay, we'll see you behind the tent.
The gentleman in yellow behind you.
Hi, my name is Alon Mwangi. I'm the producer and one of the hosts of an interview conversation podcast called Successful Fuck Ups, where we seek to redefine success one fuck up at a time and
So I
one
cancel.
conversation at a time.
It's his podcast name. It's not the same. It's not the same.
Yes, so my question is on pricing. It was touched on a bit, but I didn't on pricing. So it's not, I didn't get the answer that I wanted, and it's the one thing that I'm currently grappling on. So I wear another hat. So I'm also in the advertising space, currently leading strategy at an agency called Tuton. But over the years, I've been in digital as well, and there were times you'd get a rate card or a media kit from an influencer, and then just look at the price, you're like, this person is a joker, and you just move on to the next person. So I'm trying to not get into that box. And you mentioned the thing around using your, like, let's say the production flow and seeing how much do I need from this brand or whatever to sponsor me. But then if the production flow is too high, then I might end up in that box as well. So having reviewed or looked at different rate cards and media kits, and looking at where the podcasting space is at now, because I'm not just competing with podcasters in my niche, I'm competing with other podcasts, competing with radio and TV for that advertising shilling. So from where you sit, what's a pricing model that's making sense based on where the industry is at now?
I think there's no set answer for that, because it's something that we are also struggling with in my agency, because we get so many different rate cards from everywhere. But what I'd say is, if your production cost is high, then lower your production cost, so that at the very least, you're making the money that you're spending. At the very least, if you're starting out, that is. Or even just do it yourself so that you can make that production money. Because some rate cards are usually absurd, and some are fairly priced depending on the client's budget. And sometimes the client's budget is super high and they pay whatever money they want. So it's very difficult to determine this is the actual pricing model that you should go with. But at the very least, like we said, look at the production money that you're spending or not spending. Just put in a production value there. And then also look at your data. I usually say, I think your data should determine your price. If your numbers are super high, like I increased my rate card last year because over December, there were 3 million people engaging with my content. Of course, I can be able to convince somebody to pay me money that's worth that amount of data. So there's no right answer to that. You just have to, and also I think you have to consult. In the creative space, I think we're not shy about telling each other how much you are paid by a brand. It's not like your job salo where you're like, hey, usiambiane kenye mtu analipa. No, I think I've seen a lot of creatives just tell each other, this is what this brand paid me. And from there, you can be able to gauge how much I should charge, even if not the same, something that is workable with your numbers. So there's no right answer. And then sometimes I think it's always best to just ask what the budget is. Yeah. And sometimes you'll be told that this is the budget that we're working with. Then you see whether you can work with that or whether you'll, lower the deliverables.
Right. Because there's no industry benchmark or no industry standard like, GRPs, CPMs, there's no unit of measurement of the impact that a podcast is going to have, then it's very difficult, right? So very early on, when you're making this project and this is what my audience is, that's what you're going to forever be trading. Now, the more followers you have, the more interesting you are, the things that can increase, the more engaged your audience is, that can increase what your rate card costs. Now, if you ever look at a rate card and you're like, man, this is a successful fuck up right here, right? Then you know that the thing, you don't think it's that valuable. Yeah. But there's somewhere, someone will be very happy to pay that amount of money. Sometimes people might even think that they got a steal for the amount of money that they're paying because of who they get to collaborate with. So what is the value that you've built in and around it, that around your podcast, that you can then say, this is what I'm charging you this much money for. This is what you're exchanging with me. And then it comes into all the other things I think that we've mentioned, right? We're going to do a post here. We're going to do a poll here. We're going to be able to get your brand into a very specific conversation. And how much does that cost you, right? The measure that I've seen that I don't like putting against his estimated media value, because that's a PR thing, right? So you've had a 20-minute conversation about now my dog training brand. Does that equate to what that would have cost for me to buy that advertising on TV? But it's not, because you're super interested in dog training because it's me talking about it, right? So there's a way that you need to be able to calculate what that value is, build up from your production cost, right? Have a msimamo, and then, take from there. There's no right, no wrong answer. You're going to have to figure out what your way of charging is, and then be confident. But yes, consult, have conversations with other people, know what the ceilings and floors for different brands are. Some people want a bit more out of you for the same amount of money, and see if you're willing to do that sort of thing. But a standard cost, have something that you're confident that if you send it to me and I don't negotiate, you didn't plan for that, right? So in situations where you ask someone, okay, cool, that's enough. And then they're like, oh, no, actually it includes this and this and this. And no, your cost can't increase now. No, you wanted 300 Gs, I've given you 300 Gs, that's it. So also put in a price there that you'd be comfortable getting with no negotiation.
Okay, on to the last question.
Hi, everyone. My name is Christine. Hi, Ryan. I have a comment for crime.
Not
KE.
a comment.
Please, then I have a question. I think that sometimes we think about brands in the typical way, like Blue Band is a brand, but I think NGOs are also brands. And depending on how you pillar your content, then you can speak to brands that are looking at child abuse, domestic violence, etc., etc. So there's a whole world of brands that would be interested in a crime-related podcast. So maybe it's just to think about the other side of brands. My question, though, it has been alluded to, I think especially for people who are doing their first proposals to brands, what are, in brand language, the metrics that matter? Because it will be a new podcast versus a popular influencer. But maybe the brand should take a chance on the new podcast. But how the proposal comes through, and I'm speaking from the brand side, we really would want to give you the chance, but you're not giving us anything to work with from metrics, because we're going back to report to the business and say, this is our media plan, so we are on these channels, but then there's this podcast, there's this influencer. So how do we help the creators in the room include the things that matter to brands from a measurement point of view? And I know you said the industry maybe doesn't have that figured out, but I think if influencers can do it relatively well, then we can also guide the guys in here.
So engagement rate is what influencers have defaulted to, because it shows what percentage of the people who consume my content then engage with it. Exactly, regardless of the number. So if you have 1 million followers and your engagement rate is not at that 3-4%, it gives me, who's a small podcast, right, the same sort of ratio. My 90,000 people still have to have that 3-4%. So that, number one. Now, it's been said about polls and about other ways that you can show how engaged your audience is to you and your content. As a brand new podcast or as a platform that's coming in, I'd sell that, and then I'd sell the vision. This is how we're going to engage with the audience going forward. So from a metrics perspective, there might not be. What our hope would be is that you get a really good proposal of a podcast that's 2-3 episodes in, that's starting to get traction, and then also, from the brand side, you're not asking too much. You're not asking to come and brand the whole thing like crazy because it's 2-3 days old or 2-3 months old, right? What you're asking is come in and give me mentions in a way that endears my brand to your audience, and then we can do that. So it's 2 ways.
Do you have anything to add?
No, I have nothing to add.
Okay, thank
Nothing
you
from me.
so much.
Nothing from me.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you guys for giving us the extra time as well. I know I had told you 7, but
It's okay, I have a bill at that bar.
it's okay. That's fine. I accept all bills from the two of you. Let me not. As for the audience. Anyway, thank you so much for making the time.
Thank you very much.
Please
Thank you for having
tell
us.
the people here and those who watch on YouTube where they can find you as yourselves and as who you represent, if you want that to be what
Let
it
me
is.
go first, because
So,
yours is going to be heavy.
Mine is not heavy.
No. So I work. You can find me on LinkedIn. I do quarterly updates. I just moved. I'm the immigrant GM on LinkedIn, and then I make TikToks. It's the person that you see here and the person that's on TikTok. It only shows up once, right? And then the Saracen Marketing Group, you can follow us all over the internet. That's where I'm more likely to give professional advice. And yeah, Ryboy
You didn't give the
Cocktails.
handles for the other two.
Which was?
LinkedIn name.
LinkedIn, it's Ryan Majiwa, RyanMajiwa. If we were at this thing together and you'd like some advice from me, message me and say we were at this thing together. Yeah, I'm happy to have conversations. I don't usually do a lot of marketing stuff, but I can email you back like a lazy professor. Like email me, I'll take some time, but you get a pretty decent answer when I do email you back. Yeah, and then engage with my content. My TikTok is mostly about my dog and I, so that's, good stuff. That's the dude with the aprons on TikTok. And then Ryboy Cocktails on Instagram. If you'd like custom cocktails for any event that makes your heart flutter, taste delicious. Hashtag Ryboy Cocktails.
Yours is even heavier than mine. So Miss _Gashir on all platforms, actually. That's where you can find me, except LinkedIn. LinkedIn is just Tracy Gashir. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Thank you.
I have been your host. My name is Gadoni. Please check out AfriPods at AfriPods on all social media platforms. We are a free hosting platform. So if you have a podcast thinking of starting it, afripods.africa is where you need to be. If you have a podcast and you're not an AfriPods, I'm looking at you sideways. My social media handle is Podcasting in Africa on Instagram. Follow me if you have questions on anything podcasting. I'll be happy to help. And yeah, that's all from me. Please take pictures. Oh, one more thing. Thank you to Baraza for hosting us. They're the best people in the world. Let's clap for Baraza. Wow. Okay. And then thank you to the tech team, Semabox. They're an amazing space if you're looking to record your podcast and all of that. Please come and see them. They're here around. Make sure you come, talk to them. They're like a super team, okay? I'm not just saying that because I know them. It's true. Photographer of the day is Maine. I call him the guy whose beard connects. So please stay around. Let him take pictures of you. We'll have the space here. And Jesse, thank you for helping us social media. Jesse, please raise your hand. We'll be asking questions for what did you think about the session? Like I said, we like to know your thoughts. There's a QR code. Again, please scan it and answer the questions for me if you're able to. And that is all. See you soon.
Thank you. All right. Thank you all very much.